We've all heard the saying, you can't choose your family. Well, to a certain extent, you can't choose your neighbors anyway. Neighbors come and go, certainly. And what happens when a dispute arises between two neighbors, between yourself and a neighbor? What can you do? Here to talk a little bit more about that is attorney Matt Fleming from Murphy Desmond. Hey, Matt, so good to see you.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So obviously you're working with a lot of property owners. What are some of the most common disputes among neighbors that you see?
Well, as far as disputes among neighbors are concerned, they tend to fall in one of four categories. Either disputes about like where a property line is located, disputes about locations and the nature of use of an easement. Sometimes there are disputes about deed restrictions or restrictive covenants. And then there's just sort of what I call just general nuisance complaints that arise.
Yeah, so four kind of general types of complaints or disputes. Let's unpack those a little bit. Can you give us a little bit more detail about each of those and how they typically arise?
Well, I think kind of the common theme amongst all of these types of disputes is you have really conflicting sets of expectations between neighbors, and then usually one neighbor wants to change the status quo of what's been going on. Then when you combine that with some, maybe ambiguous legal documents, poor dysfunctional communication between neighbors, and one or both parties behaving in maybe a little more aggressive manner regarding their expectations, then you can really have a significant dispute. So, like take for an example, a situation with an access easement, and one owner has been traveling over another owner's property to access theirs for many years, and it's just been a single little gravel driveway with passenger vehicles. But then all of a sudden, they want to start bringing large work vehicles home, and a lot more traffic occurs, and they maybe want to pave it and widen the pavement. Well, if the other neighbor isn't consulted or they don't really like that, the seeds of a real significant dispute can arise.
Yeah, and obviously, you talk about expectations. These types of disputes, I'm sure, arise a lot. How are neighbors typically handling these disputes? Are most people, would you say, pretty good about resolving them outside of court, or do they more often than not end up by going to court?
Well, I suppose there are maybe many that I never see, in which case that means they're probably handled well. But for the ones we see, it typically is a result of neighbors just not being able to handle it very well at all. And usually what happens is you get emotions involved, and things escalate. People are very emotional about their property, particularly if it's residential property. They're emotional about the concept of property rights. And, you mix that with some, aggravating behavior, and before you know it, you not only just have a problem, but you have a bigger problem than when you started.
So let's say that someone reaches out to you with a dispute or a possible dispute. What typically are they saying to you, and what are you responding with? How are you responding?
Well, we get the whole story, and usually that involves a lot of things, both legal and not legal. And so we try to break it down, gather the relevant documents, review the history, and really identify what the legal issues, and try to categorize things according to, what could really be resolved on a legal basis in court, in litigation, but then also sort of discuss all the sort of side issues that have arisen, and talk about really whether those things can be addressed in court or not. And oftentimes those are the things that are standing in the way of a resolution, but yet aren't things that a court's going to address. So, after looking at all that, we advise at all the different options, and sometimes you find that litigation or fighting about it is necessary and worthwhile, but oftentimes we find a resolution is possible, even if it requires maybe engaging in some mediation, where you work with a mediator to help work through the problems. And I've been through many mediations, both as an attorney and as a mediator, and I really find that process to be very helpful in these types of cases.
We're just under a minute left here today, so we got to wrap things up, Matt, but I'm wondering if you have any final words for viewers right now who might be involved in a dispute, or even better yet, how they might be proactive in preventing a dispute.
Well, the most important thing is just to try to keep the temperature low. Try to understand where your neighbor's coming from and really try to have good faith communications. But if that's not working, don't hesitate to get a lawyer involved. A good lawyer is going to be able to help you look at this from an objective standpoint, identify the true legal issues, draw on experience, and try to propose some solutions, and hopefully get you to the end with a resolution before things get out of hand.
But option number one sounds like it's always just be cool. So Matt Fleming, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share that with us. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.